Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. Now I See is the second play of a trilogy by actor, writer, choreographer and filmmaker Lanre Malaolu, which, like the first part, Samskara, which had a sellout run at London's Yard Theatre in 2022 and was subsequently published by Nick Hern Books, examines family relationships through a modern black British lens. The new play will be at Theatre Royal Stratford East in London in May 2024. I spoke to Lanre a month earlier and I asked him what the story of Now I See is about.
So a couple of years ago, I put a show on called Samskara, which was about generational cycles of fatherhood within the black community, looking at how we as fathers, and I say we, I'm not a father, but how we as fathers and sons, how our fathers pass things over to our sons. And some of those things are really beautiful and healthy and robust and important, whether that be kind of emotional values, whether that be ways of living. And then some of those things are perhaps, I would say maybe challenging for sons to kind of continue on and take on within themselves and bring into their families, or there's this slight dissonance within the generations of who we are as sons and who we want to be and who our fathers are saying we should be. And so that for me was kind of like a conversation that I was having with myself, thinking about who I am as a son in my father's eyes and who I want to be, and extends to, I think, all families, of just like the things that, you know, our parents pass over to us without telling us or us knowing it. And, years later, we're like, oh, there's this cycle of behavior that I've got, yeah. Which is rooted from. And so that was that piece. And it was very much about these 5 black men and different generations of these 5 black men. And showed it came on, and it really had a deep impact in my life and in many other people's lives who were in the process, and, you know, a lot of people came to see it. And I found myself at my laptop because it came back for another run. It was at the Yard Theatre, and I found myself at my laptop. It was the second run. So it was the second run. I was actually staying at my sister's at the time, and I remember sitting at my laptop and I just started to write. So the show was on, so it was running. And I was like, oh. I just had this feeling, and I just started to write. Got to my laptop, just started to write, put some music on, and I just started to write. And I was off. I was off, but I was on, right? So what do I mean by that? I think writers will know. Some writers will know. Or they're like, what is this guy talking about? I don't care. Anyway, so I was off, but I was on. For me, I was like, boom, I was like, I can't explain it. I just zoned out. I zoned out, and these words were pouring out of me. And I used the word pour, and I'm going to come back to why I used the word pour as well, which is really interesting. But these words were pouring out of me. I then kind of like saw them, looked at them, left them alone for a good few months because I was occupied with other things. And I was like, okay, I'm going to revisit this if it wants me to revisit it. And it did, and I did. And then I carried on writing. And I found myself realizing that Samskara was almost the first chapter in a book, if you want to call it that. And this piece, Now I See, this thing that I was writing was becoming the second chapter of this book. And this second chapter was exploring the relationship between 3 black men who were brothers. And I've really, over the last few years specifically, thought about who I am as a brother and what space that I occupy in my brother's life. And that extended outside of being a brother, but also what space do I occupy in my family? And this piece for me is about reconnecting. It specifically looks at these two brothers who were estranged, and there's one of their brothers has passed away, and they're at the celebration of life. So they're Nigerian. So funerals in Nigerian culture, it's really like their funerals are never easy. but there's so much joy wrapped around these funerals where, you know, we have the burial and then there's this big party afterwards. It's a celebration of life, and there's food and there's dancing, and there's joy and there's laughter and there's connecting with family you haven't seen for years. And so they meet at this celebration of life. One of the brothers has been estranged from the family from this big thing that happened between him and the brother who had passed, which kind of is kind of explored and it comes out. It's this kind of ruptured the family. And because of that, he left as a teenager, and the kind of invisible thread of that moment has seeped through his whole life and is kind of calcified and weathered him into this person who he's become because of this thread, because of this story that he's held in his heart his whole life. And this piece is about how these brothers reconnect with each other and how they reconnect with themselves through the eyes of the passing of their brother, but also through the eyes of who they want to be, not just today, but tomorrow, and who they want to be as brothers, and what space they want to occupy in their family going forwards. So yeah, that's a bit, I could speak more about it, but you know.
Yeah, funerals are, they're often used as that perfect setting for bringing together estranged family members and raking up a few, reopening a few old wounds. So does that sort of thing happen?
Well, it's interesting that you said that, because families are interesting, right? Oh, yes. You said the word, right? You said old wounds. And I think there's something so interesting that I am so intrigued by, how in families, I can only speak from my family and what I've seen, but like, I find that in my family, we have, you know, a vision of who, families have a vision of who you are from things that have happened in the past, right? And they've got this picture of you that they think that is clear as day of who you are. Even if and when you've gone off, changed, become who you become, gone through all these experiences, you'll come back to this event, or you'll come back to a dinner party, and it's like the same stories and the same narratives that have kind of threaded, and I've said, you know, the invisible threads, those invisible threads that have kind of threaded through each other, that makes the family unit, almost people cling on to them and keep on as if that is, these threads are not changing because this is what I know and this is who you are. And I always find that there's this kind of almost this dissonance, and that this is where the kind of wounds come from, because it's almost as if one family member is saying, you know, this is who you are and this is who I know you to be. The other is saying, this is who I am now. This is who I know myself to be. And then up in the air is this thing that happened, the wound, the old wound. And I think for me, one could call it wound or a wound or wounds. One could also call it a story, because all families have stories, right? We all have stories. And it's so interesting. There are particular moments that I can key back to in my family where one version of my family, my sister, is saying, no, this moment happened like this. You said that, and I'm saying, no, it happened like, and we have these versions of this same story that are seen from different perspectives, which cause those wounds or those ruptures in relationships, I believe anyway. And some of those stories are beautiful and funny and joyful. And this is what we explore in the piece. Like for me, like it's not, this play in this piece is not about grief. It's not about pain. It's about reconnecting. It's about joy. It's about discovery, self-discovery, and it's about healing. You know, funeral is like, you're right. It's kind of like a ripe ground. Of course, we're there to kind of mourn and to celebrate life, but it is also ripe ground to kind of open old wounds, but it's also ripe ground to heal old wounds as well through the eyes of that passing, and also through the eyes of who these people are today and who they want to be from and through this passing, you know.
So the first play there was obviously a family connection there with fathers and sons. With this one, it's brothers. But in between, you had your documentary film, The Circle, which was also about brothers. Did that feed into this as well?
Oh, he's done his research. Do you know what, man? I think I find it difficult to sit down and say I have strategically explored this, and this. I don't. It doesn't work like that for me, man. It's just like it's all emotional. It's all like an emotional feeling that I have, and it's all about where and what things and emotional strands occupy themselves in my life, and the questions that are coming out of those emotional strands for me. A lot of what I'm doing, man, is, look, man, I'm so flipping curious, and I just want to understand, David. I want to understand about myself. I want to understand myself more. I want to understand people more. I want to understand my family more. I want to understand relationships more. I want to understand Black men more. I want to understand why we do what we do sometimes, why we act, why we hold, why we wear the armor that we sometimes wear. I want to understand my mum. I want to understand my dad. I want to know why he did that. I want to know why me and my brother have this beautiful relationship that has these nuances that we don't talk about, or we haven't talked about. I want to understand why I fell out with someone who I saw as a brother my whole life, but out of this one argument that we had this deep emotional impact in my life, which was something that I've explored through the writing and found healing from through the writing of this piece. And for me, it's about just wanting to understand, to ask questions, to dig in deeper, and to connect, to understand and to connect. And, you know, that's what it is for me. So going back to your question, I think yes and no.
Right.
I could have just said yes and no and said move on, right? But I went on that long, but, you know, hopefully that makes a bit more sense, because that's where it comes from.
Yeah. So your motivation for writing really is trying to understand things that you've come across in your own life.
Yeah. Things I've come across in my own life, and things that I've seen through my eyes, and the relationships I've seen in my family, or, you know, relationships I've had. Yes. So through my own life, but also outside of that as well. What I see, you know, and the questions that keep me up at night, or the questions I'm like, why is that? You know, why? Yeah. So it's kind of like that.
The way you describe writing this, though, it's what most writers dream of, and doesn't happen very often. A lot of the time, writing is a struggle, isn't it? But when you get that motivation, when you get that spur, when it starts to tumble out of you, you've got to go with it, haven't you?
David, I'm sorry. Let's stop here. Stop the podcast. This has been a struggle.
Right.
I mean, there's been let me be clear. This happened, this process, that was the beginning of the process in some sense. But, you know, it was all bits. I had loads of bits. And then the time where I sat down to put these bits together, there's a lot of personal things I explore in this piece. And for the first time in my life, I sat down and I emotionally and, you know, mentally was going through what I was writing. I was writing through what I was going through, and it was really difficult. And I had days where I genuinely I didn't think I could finish this. I did not think I could finish this. And I'm talking like really, I remember who I was saying this to. There were moments I was writing, and there'll be moments where I'd just be laughing. I'd be laughing at what I'm just laughing and laughing. And then 10 minutes later, I'm crying. And I said to this person, I said, my neighbors must think I'm on crack or something. I mean, it's crazy, because they just hear they hear music playing. Yeah. And this brother, I'm hearing music. I'm just laughing, crying, and then I'm just walking around. but essentially, like, I just didn't know if I could finish this, man. I did not know if I could finish this because I wanted to also, I think every writer wants to do this where they, you want to tell an emotionally true, honest story, and you want to push yourself creatively and aesthetically and through craft. You want to challenge yourself. You want to get better, and you want that to kind of be seeded into what you're doing in the present. So I think I know I was holding those things. I was holding the emotional stuff, which is a heavy weight in itself, exploring things that are really kind of delicate and sensitive to me, whilst also wanting to push myself and my craft, which, I always want to do. And I'm always, I always want to kind of keep, I think as artists, we all have these vision of what it is that we can achieve and what it is we can do. And for me, it's got nothing to do with ego. It's just got to do with this energy. Some call it flow. I call it like the spirit. And I feel like something is like coming through me when I'm writing. And I know what that potential is and can be when mixed in with what I'm feeling, and just seeing and feeling the picture of that and making sure I can honor it. I want to honor it as much as possible. And I think that's where the ambition comes from, not the ambition of, I want to write something great. I want the world to, because I don't care about that. I don't, I want it to be true, man.
Yeah.
I want it to be true. Is it true? Is it true though? Is it true? Are you lying? Are you lying, Lanre? And this is when I'm writing, when I'm going through the drafts now, and I'm seeing the writer. I'm seeing the writer. I'm like, okay, Lanre. All right, I see you. And I'm like, oh, damn it. Cut it.
Yeah.
Because it's not true.
Yeah.
If it's not true, what's the point? Who is it for people to stand up and clap? No, stop, Lanre, stop. And I think I've had to check myself. I've had to get silent. I've had to get silent over the years and just really check myself, man. Really check myself.
It's like when Joe Alton was writing What the Butler Saw, his last play. He was a comedy, but if he wrote a line that made him laugh, he cut it because it interrupted the flow.
Well, this is beautiful because for me, I think there's different types of laughter and different types of lines. So for me, if I'm writing and I'm like belly laughing and I'm still writing, I'm like, okay, this is in.
Yeah.
If I'm going, oh, this will be funny, and then I start writing, then I'm going to cut that.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
For me, it's like that. Like if I'm in the flow of writing, and then I'm like, I don't know if people can't see this, but right now I pretend my fingers are in the air like I'm playing piano. What am I doing? But like if I'm writing, and I'm just like, I slip into it. I think it's the slipping in. The ones that you slip into are the ones you keep in, for me.
Yeah.
Because the ones you slip into are the true ones. The ones where I'm like, it feels like there's a lot of kind of tactical stuff going on.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, this is going to get cut. So yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you've got to write through those moments, haven't you? Just so you've got something to go back to. But we're talking about writing, but you're not just a writer. You're actor, writer, choreographer, filmmaker. Didn't an agent once say to you that they didn't know where to put you because you do too many things?
Yeah, something like that. That was an interesting. I still remember that meeting clear as day, man. And you know what? I think it's got to do with. I think at the time I didn't know where to put myself, and it's not to say that I know where to put myself now. But what I mean by that is creatively, I didn't have as much of a picture and a robust picture and experience that I have now in all those fields to understand how I feel that I want to best tell my stories through my creative fields. I now really get it. Back then, I was more like, oh, so I think at the time I had just done my first solo show. I think I had, but I was like, okay, so I know that I'm a choreographer and I'm an actor. I've been doing a lot of movement direction, but so it was like I wasn't as clear as well, and that had something to do with it. However, I do think a bit of that was to do with just, sometimes you don't connect with the right people and the right, the agents that I've connected with to now are like, I'd almost call them family,
Yeah.
genuinely, because when you're seen, and I think a big thing and a big theme in my work and in who I am, it's all about how I'm seen and if I'm seen and how people are seen and if they're seen. And I think everything comes down to that. Every disruption in any relationship is because someone doesn't feel seen in the way that they feel that they need to be seen or want to be seen, whether that's in families, whether that's in relationships. And because my creative world is such an integral and an important part of who I am, if I feel like, and I felt this with my agents, like that they really get it and they get me and they get creatively the stories that I want to tell, and importantly, where I'm telling them from. And these are two white women. When I'm talking about my theatre agents, these are two white women. This is so important to say. But if you can I've sat down with these incredible people and I've said, okay, I'm a black man, right? You will never understand who I am as a black man. Okay, this is my work. This is. So I set my short film. This is book. This is me going, boom, blam, because I am as a black man in what I'm doing. Of course I am. I then listened. I then sat and listened to how they experienced it and what they saw of who I am in that. And what they were saying back to me, I was like, oh, okay. So you don't know me and you will never understand my experience, but you see me. You really do see me, and you see creatively where I want to go, and you see the stories and you see where they're coming from. You see the clarity and you see the messiness inside me that I know is inside me, that I'm understanding, that comes through in the process. But you see the clarity and the messiness and you see the emotional integrity. You see all those things. And I think that for me is really like important and integral. And I don't even know where that came from and what we started talking about, David. So what am I talking about right now?
Well, but where did all this come from? Where did you start creating theatre? How did you start?
I think there's multiple starts in it. The first beginning for me is like just music coming on and just dancing like a madman in the corner. That's as a young child, that's creating, that's expressing, that's creating, that's connecting. And then the next phase is like, I went to a place called Anna Scher Theatre, which is this incredible, she passed away recently, an incredible woman who ran these weekend arts, I don't know if you call it weekend arts, art college, or just kind of like, it was just every Saturday we'd go and just create these pieces of theatre within minutes. We just create, we have a theme, have an idea, get into fours, have a beginning, middle, and end, have an impactful moment that would happen, a moment of conflict, and we just create, and then we'd share it with each other, and we talk about it. We'd say, "Oh, we thought this worked really well. We thought this really worked." That for me was the beginning, because within those moments, like there'd be someone who would lead. And within that as well, you'd have those moments of kind of navigating what it is to work with people without actually being in a rehearsal room. You are technically in a drama class, but it's literally seeded in with everything that this industry, you're talking to people, you're navigating relationships, you're understanding how and when to speak, you're understanding your place, you're understanding how to tell a story, right? So for me, that was really the beginning, and then I guess that feeling continued on into after the classes. Me and a group of friends used to just dance, and that happened after the class. After every class, we just dance and dance and dance, and that just became a thing. I then made a just dance group with a friend, and that dance group grew into a company, and that company grew into a dance theater company that we toured around the world. And then I kind of carved my own space from that. So the company ended and had its natural end, and I continued to carve out my space as a creative in the industry and in just making stuff. And for me, it's about spaces. For me, it's about creating spaces that are full of. It's about creating a space to connect. Because for me, ultimately, what I want to do and what I'm doing is all about connection. It's all about understanding. And if that connection and understanding isn't in the creative space, what is the point? I don't care about the film. I don't care about what happens on the stage if it is not honored in the room and with the people and in the space. What is the point? That's the way I see it and feel it. And I've learned to see it. Because do you know what, David? I've been in rooms. I won't say, but I've been in, as an actor, in, big theatre rooms, quote unquote, with a lot of hierarchy and a lot of ego in a lot of institutions. I've been there. I've seen it as an actor, as a movement director. Oh, man. And I just remember consciously, subconsciously saying, I don't like this. And I'm going to help to cultivate spaces that are the opposite of this, where people can come into the space and be who they are without people taking offense, where there isn't these egos slapping each other in the face, playing tic-tac-toe every flipping morning. And, do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I've seen it, and I've just stood back going, rah. Just gone, rah. Is this what? Okay, no thanks. Anyway, yeah.
So you took that and did it in your own way? You decided how to set up your own rehearsal room?
Yeah.
Wasn't Breakin convention at Sadler's Wells quite a moment for you as well?
Yeah, man. Yeah, big moment. Shout out Jonzi D, man. Jonzi D has had a really big impact in my life creatively and in many artists' life. Yeah, big impact. It was a show that I and a friend, that's the company that's how the company started. We watched the show at Breakin Convention, Sadler's Wells, and we were like, oh, we got to get on that stage. We got to get on that stage. Got to be on that stage. And created this company, auditioned for a show, never got in for the show for Breakin Convention with the company. Auditioned again one year, and the next year never got in. And I think it's a metaphor for life, because there was one year I specifically had choreographed this piece. It was called Antibody. And actually, it was just a piece that I remember. It's so funny because I was actually at one of these quote unquote institutions, right? While I was choreographing this piece called Antibody. So I remember after rehearsals, this is what I would always like. I'd either spend time in the rehearsal room after rehearsals or go home and just be choreographing always. Even while I wasn't at the company. So I was away from the company, but I was still choreographing. So for when I got back after the theatre job. Anyway, I got back, choreographed this piece, and it wasn't for the intention to audition for Breakin Convention. It was just for the intention of letting this piece come out, because I felt it clear as day in my body. And so then, we presented it at these like little shows, and one of the shows Jonzi D was at, and he was like, yeah, you gotta bring this piece to Breakin, audition this piece, audition it. And we're like, oh yeah, Jonzi D wants us to audition this piece. That must be a sign, man. That's a sign. We auditioned for it. We got in. And I remember that moment. And the moment that I remember even more is receiving a call from my acting agent at the time saying, hey Lanre, hope you're good. So you've got an offer for a role in this theatre project at High Tide Theatre, right? They want you to play a character in this play. Oh, I can't remember what the play was called. Was it Neighbours? I can't remember. But they want you to play a character in this play, and the director's interested in you also being the movement director for this as well. Because this is something that I haven't said, but like, there were times where I was going into auditions as an actor, and these cast directors and producers, you know, in some TV and film and some theatre was saying, oh, yes, well, I saw some of your movement and dance stuff online and your dance company. Really? Yeah, tell us, look. So this would always happen in these auditions. So I was like, again, that was a sign. Anyway, going back. So anyway, I got offered, right, this job, a month and a half job. Yeah. However, it clashed with Breakin Convention. Breakin Convention is one night.
Yeah.
This job was a month and a half, and you're getting paid weekly. Breakin Convention is one night. It was the quickest no that I remember saying ever. And this was at the time, I was in my early 20s. This was like, you know, it was money, innit? Yeah. And like, I'm a working class black boy. It was like X amount of, I don't know, what was it? Something, you know, equity rate, however that it was back then. Per week, which was money for me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And Breakin Convention, of course, is paid, but it wasn't as much because that one was over a longer period of time. Quickest no. And then I remember performing on the stage in front of, I don't know, what is it, over 1,000 seats? Is it at the Sadler's Wells? I can't remember how many seats they have. It's a big theatre, main stage. And I just remember crying afterwards, because it was the first time I was like, rah, okay, so here I am. I'm a, you know, working class black boy from Hackney. And I had this dream, this vision, this thing of being on this stage and having something that I wanted with my whole heart. And it happened.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of working class black boys, working class people in general who are like, you know, we have to grind to a certain degree just to feel like we can even dream to achieve something, let alone to dream to achieve something. And you're almost conditioned to just take what you're given.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're conditioned to go, okay, well, I'm just going to take and get what I'm given, and it's the first time I was like, well, hold on, stop everything. Maybe there's more.
Yeah.
Maybe I can think bigger. Maybe this small sphere that I've been thinking in and conditioned to thinking, and because of X, Y, and Z, because of some of the reasons that are not my fault, but are the fault of X, Y, and Z, which we don't even need to get into, maybe I can still think and be, and, you know, that it sounds cheesy, but yeah, dream bigger. Yeah. But also, it's not just about dreaming. It's about embodying now what it is you want to be. Dreaming is pointless. Dreaming is pointless if you're not really embodying and doing the work.
Yeah.
If you're not sitting down and feeling like you want to pull your hair out your hair and, as you said, writing through it.
Yeah.
That is the embodiment of the dream that you want to achieve. That is the thing. Dream big, everyone. Dream big. Oh, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything.
A bit too Disney.
It's a bit too Disney, mate. It's a bit too Disney. And shout out to Disney. They do help people. Disney, listen, man. Disney do beautiful things. Black Panther changed a lot of people's lives, including mine. Do you know what I mean? But like, there's different versions of Disney, of course, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't just a dream. It was a dream that you worked hard at for 3 years, wasn't it? To failed twice and was still persistent, because that's what it was about, the persistence, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm a stubborn bugger, man. I'm a stubborn bugger to in a way of if I have a feeling and I'm like, well, no, this I know I just feel it. I'm gonna follow through with that feeling. I'm gonna follow through. And I think that's what it is creatively, just following through with a feeling.
Yeah.
That's all that I'm trying to do, really. And sometimes you finish, it comes out and you're like, okay, recalibrate. maybe that wasn't right. Maybe this isn't recalibrate. How do you recalibrate? And maybe you're not going down the right path. Hold on, let me check in with myself. Let me check in with where I'm at. What's going on? Okay, recalibrate. But as long as you're being true to that, or I'm being true to that feeling, then that's where the stubbornness and the tenacity comes from. It doesn't come from ego, and maybe it did before, but boy, I've definitely come out of that era or that stage. It just comes from following through the feeling.
The first play in this trilogy, Samskara, has been published as well by Nick Hern Books. So did that feel like another step? And I know publication for a playwright's not necessarily a goal, but it's quite a nice feeling to see your words in print, isn't it?
Mate, when my agents told me about that, I was like, you mean to tell me you mean to tell me that this piece, Samskara, this piece is going to be in print? You mean to tell me I can go on Amazon and buy a play that is written by me? And I remember my friend sent me a picture because it was in the National Theatre. It's in the National Theatre.
Yeah.
She sent me the picture, and I just was like, "What's going on here?" I like, what's going on here? Look, man. Yeah, you can tell by the way I'm talking. It's just, I did not expect it. It was the most beautiful moment to hold it in my hands, because that thing came from me, but it's not about me. Mm. It's not about me. It came from me, and it's trying to understand my relationships, but it's not about me. It's about that idea of who am I within the eyes of my dad, within the eyes of the other black men, what are, it was all about those who, and understanding and why, and wanting to connect and seeing, allowing generations to see themselves through other eyes, and all those embodiments of those questions that I had, and those feelings that I had, and that embodiment of following through with a feeling, and then knowing that feeling has been in my body, and then also having it in my hand as an outside object. Does that make sense, David?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It was like this embodiment of all those feelings and all those relationships and all those questions in my flipping hand. Like, people can walk past a flipping shop who has never met me and maybe touch some of that through reading. Yeah. In some way, and allow it to touch them. Man, even as I speak about it now, I'm like, it's mad. So yeah, it was a beautiful thing.
But Now I See is the second in a trilogy, which suggests that there's a part 3 coming at some point. So where do you take the story from here?
Look, man, I've learned about things, right? in this creative world. Look, what can I say here? This part 3, I don't know what it's going to be. That's what I'll say, because I'm not in control of that right now. The same way that I was not in control of even knowing that there was going to be a trilogy until it became, I started to write, and then all these crazy instances started to happen. For example, with Samskara, there's this element that we use and we explored with soil in the piece and earth, and that being like a healing. There's this physical healing movement sequence that happens with all the men and with soil at the end of the piece. And why this became the second in the trilogy was not only because it was exploring these relationships between these 3 black men as brothers, but also, I can't say too much, but the element of water started to just come and weave itself so naturally within the writing. It brought me to tears. It brought me to tears of how, I can't explain how natural it came in the writing, and certain music that I had come across, which is going to be in this piece, how natural they came across me right during the writing process of this. So for this third one, I don't know. But what I can tell you is, for the first time in my life, I went to Nigeria. It was for my sister's wedding. This was in February. And it was life-changing on so many different levels. I came straight back from Nigeria into the mix of Now I See. So that processing of that experience is going to continue over months and months, because I had these impactful moments with family. It was the first time I saw family in my life, ever. Some members of my family. I saw things that I'd never seen before. I experienced emotional things that I'd never experienced before. And I do in some ways think that this third one might have something to do with that in some way that I may not know right now. It might be that, it might not be. I also am open to the fact that this trilogy, this last part, if it is the last part, might be something completely unexpected. It might be in film form. It might not be fit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It will come to me when it comes to me. And I don't know when that's going to be. We'll see what happens.
Do you have anything else on the horizon? Writing, acting?
Yeah, there's conversations, there's things, there always is, right? I don't know. It's like there's conversations, there's things. And like right now, my focus is Now I See. And those conversations, those things are bubbling, and, people are taking care of those while I'm in this. This is my focus. This is where I'm at. Everything else is there, and it will come to fruition when it comes to fruition. What kind of answer is that you're thinking? Lanre, just give me a flipping answer, mate. But, it is what it is. There's some stuff in the future, but right now, this is where I'm at, and this is okay.
That was Lanre Malaolu, writer, director and movement director of Now I See, which runs at Theatre Royal Stratford East from the 10th of May to the 1st of June 2024. For more information and tickets, see www.stratfordeast.com, or for more information about Lanre, see www.lanremalaolu.com. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.